I was watching some stuff on old Kidman from back in the day. Anyways, he was saying, I think it might have been around that 1928 era, but they were going through a drought there. And the way that Kidman used to set his places up, like he had a lot of places, especially up through that Channel country, all the way up to tip top of Australia. And he used to sort of move his cattle around. But this drought sort of was an Australian wide drought during this time. Anyway, he was predicting to lose 100,000 head of cattle during that time. I'm not actually sure how many end up losing, but that's how bad the drought was.
That's a lot of beasts. That's a lot of real dry country,
A
you
lot of
could
money.
say. Yeah, yeah, in that sort of sense, yeah.
Yeah.
So Sid Kidman, the cattle king.
The cattle king.
That's what he is.
So droughts have been around for obviously that there's going back to like we said around that 1928 times, and still happening today. And they got all this climate change stuff, but if it's all a cycle, and like Kidman said, is the way I think he had over 100 properties.
Yeah,
And he used to basically play chess with nature, is what they called it. So he would move cattle around, however, that sort of country's doing all the time, like what the weather's doing, and like you said, nature and that. And then he'd just move. Like he had a lot of drovers working for him, so I'd drive a lot of cattle from one end to the other.
yeah, that's correct. So well, the way his properties were set up were in his mind, he wanted a drought free system and a system that he could drove his beast from one side of the country to the other to get to a sale. And the all his properties and all that sort of stuff were built or were purchased around creek systems in that channel country and big river systems and swamps and that sort of stuff to always have water there, as water's the biggest thing that you need.
He wasn't like raised into that sort of into them properties. He built an empire. I'm pretty sure from scratch.
That's correct, he did. So I think he was about 13 when he ran away from home with his one-eyed horse called Cyclus or something like that. And I think he had 5 shillings to his name, and yep, off he went. And from there, he started to be an entrepreneur from just starting out being like a station hand. Or
He was really good with
drover.
horses too, wasn't he? Like he was breaking horses or something at the time, or he might have bought a horse. He purchased.
Yeah, well, he was breaking horses. He was doing a lot of horse work and that sort of stuff too.
Yeah.
And then from there, he bought into like droving businesses where they were moving like bullocks and all that sort of stuff. And then he also had a little butcher and that sort of stuff. And then from there, he bought property and then realised what was happening with moving cows and the droughts and stuff and buying more and more and more. So then it was a big chain. So he could work this chain.
He ended up going in partnerships with a fella. So he ended up getting enough herd to where he could buy a place. Anyways, he went partners with this person. I think it might have been about 3,500 acres that he bought. Don't quote me on that. But anyways, but he bought a little place, and then he ended up working up from that. He ended up having 6,000 pounds, I think it is what they called it back then. Anyways, he sort of used that money and invested it, like you said, into little places, into different sort of avenues with cattle and that. Anyways, he went through a bit of a tough time there where this drought hit and he was nearly going to lose everything. Like he was like really taking the gamble here. And a lot of people, like a lot of other cattle owners and that, were going bankrupt, and he was sort of picking up pieces from them and borrowing money from here and you putting it here and then flipping that money into here. Anyways, like I said, a lot of people ended up going bankrupt during this period of time. By the time it was all said and done, he ended up walking out with, or turning that 6,000 pounds into 40,000 pounds, right? So that's when he started buying the properties. And then, like I said, because people were going bankrupt during that time, and then he was picking up more, and he's just the way that he sort of maneuvered and then had all these places set up and where he'd buy, and that was pretty incredible, and how smart you got to be able to play that chess game.
Oh, and he was a very, very smart man and just learned by living on the land. There's one story there that's he nearly lost his life there. One time they were walking across a flat or something, and They ended up running out of water. An old mate he was with was like, keep going. This is it. I'm done. And Sid pretty well heard some cows or seen some cows or something over a hill and yeah, climbed up over this hill and there's a big dam there. So he's jumped straight in, had a drink of water, then got himself all better, ran back, got old mate and got him all better. And
Yeah.
but that's the lifestyle they were living. It was so harsh back then. It's not as easy as now just jumping in your chopper and having a fly around, but how gritty that they had to be. And this is the reason why he's like the cattle king.
And there was also, most people have probably heard this, and we've mentioned it before on the podcast about he was a real sort of guy that didn't like tasted stuff, like things, food or whatever. And there was that yarn getting around that one of his stockmen used a match to light a cigarette around a campfire. Anyways, he ended up sacking him for it. It was like, why are you wasting a match when there's a fire there? You know what I mean? Anyways, the story goes that there was many other sort of situations like that where he'd give like his workers and that food and that, and if he'd walked past and just say saw half a jar of jam laying around or thrown away or half a muesli bar or whatever thrown in the ground, that would irritate him, and you'd most likely get sacked for it because it's just a waste.
In this game, you gotta have that dog.